Blessed be the Lord. My Return into Tibet, Cosmic Teachings of a Lama. By Samael Aun Weor, Christmas Message 1969 to 1970. Part 2. Chapter 22. Mortality and Immortality. Ineffable, mystic rose from the profound valley of the Spirit. Immortal mother of my heart, hearken unto me. Light of my eyes, rose of my orchard, east from the horizon of my life, prudent as the Hebraic Abigail and amiable like Ruth, have pity on me. Blooming hurry, with a flushed color and blue eyes filled with love, bountiful beauty, mother of mine. Delicate and fresh flower from the fertile continent of my soul. Embalmed jasmine from a fruit-flowering garden of Ionia, a cultivated garden with greenness from Erin, without mist from Caledonia. I learned how to love because of thee. Indeed, I am nothing without thee. Divine Princess Kundalini, adorable serpent. Thou taught to me the secret of the abyss. Thus, I descended into the underground world inquiring, investigating, searching. So, without thee. Oh, adorable mother, I could have never discovered the gate of mystery where Dante found these dreadful words written thereon. Through me you pass into the city of woe. Through me you pass into eternal pain. Through me among the people lost for aye. Just as the founder of my fabric moved. To rear me was the task of power divine. Supremest wisdom and primeval love. The for me things create were none, save things. Eternal and eternal I endure. All hope abandon, ye who enter here. I knew the gate for the impassive souls and the way across the Acheron. I navigated the boat of Sharon across to the opposite shore. I passed through the damned portals of the city of Dis. I know the profound gulfs which gird such a desolated land. Woeful is the one who succumbs before the horrifying horrors of the three furies. Hence, I saw many fallen colossi devolving within the submerged mineral kingdom. I saw muses, once with flushed faces, now becoming pale and sinister. I found the glorious tumult and the backchants always assisting in order to adorn with their pardalidas. I saw the Bacchae withering themselves on the bronzed forehead of the abysmal, lubricious Selene. Thus, the ivies of flowering Thyrsus are dried as shriveled hay. The insolent consuls from Rome were disobediently assisting with the burial because their intolerable pride was not yet subdued by the immortal yoke of the gospel. Behind came the lustful courtesans of Latium, the Bohemian and degenerated bards, the learned, hypocritical, and perverse religious crowds and the materialistic swine-like enemies of the Eternal One. Thus, because of the brilliant flash of the axe swung against them. The wretched mortals by the inexorable Parca, the sublime messenger in transit, whom they cannot see, cannot understand any voice that spiritually speaks to them. Behold there, the famous Empress Semiramis striving to quench the thirst of her lust. Look, farther yon lays Capaneus, the elder from Crete, writhing in proud scorn. He of the 7 kings was one who girt Thebes with siege. He held and still seems to hold God in disdain. Continuing in this inexhaustible procession is Nessus, he who for the fair Deianira died and wrought himself revenge for his own fate, as well as Chiron the centaur, the old tutor of Achilles and Pholus, prone to wrath. Oh, how many crimes, God of mine! When would I finish counting them? In which book would these ones fit? Black river of lost humanity, devolving through time, falling backwards, towards the past. Beloved reader, God grant along the way that a soft aroma of white lilies may pour from your life, so that you may drink the crystalline nectar of the honest pleasure, free from woes. Do not descend, my child, because the descending ladder has 7 steps and at the end of it is the cycle of the terrible necessity. To become beast, plant, and stone again inside the infernal worlds is indeed more bitter than bile. Remember the cruel harpies who cast the Trojans out from the Strophades islands. Dante found them tormenting the involuting plants in the Averno, making them bleed with their execrable claws. I want you to know that within the very core of the earth, where the abominable throne of Dis is found, I have seen fossilized creatures reducing themselves into comic dust. Horrifying, unforgettable, and Dantesque spectacle. Harlots, whores, frightfully fornicating on their filthy beds, strumpets, courtesans, prostitutes, slowly disintegrating themselves, losing, little by little, their legs, etc. The second death is dreadful and horrifying. The ego and the lunar bodies disintegrate very slowly in the Tartarus. It is a repugnant suffering for the lost souls. Just let Medusa come, then we shall turn him into stone. The three Furies cry, we should have punished Theseus' assault opportunely, a while ago, O God of mine, while in a profound meditation. I saw two lost souls departing from within the Averno after their second death. Fortunately, they now neither have ego nor lunar bodies, yet their sacred tunics were indeed stained by the mud of the earth. The wretched creatures were weeping while remembering their painful journey through the underground of the terrestrial crust. By now, these souls live again as playful, happy gnomes under the tender sight of our Lord the Sun. In some future eternity, they will enter again into the elemental paradises of the plants. In a very remote future, they could have the joy of reincorporating themselves again into an animal organism, in order to fly as eagles or walk within the profound forests of nature, or in order to swim as the fish within the deep abysses of the waters. It is obvious that after many billions or trillions of years, those souls will reconquer the human state that in aforetime they lost. And, if disgracefully they again come to fall? Woe! 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 How painful is the cycle of the terrible necessity! Draw near unto me, you who know the word filled with grace, majesty, and elegance, which as Gangora yesterday was polished by Dario, purified by Ikaza and celized by Nervo. Draw near and you will see recondite esoteric flows of profound faith and virile bravery, latent in the rocks, in the air, in the waters, and in the fire. Woe unto you, intellectual animals who populate the face of the earth! Wretched souls with egoic consciousness, dressed with lunar clothes. Your implacable quench uselessly plots mad attacks, scorning the heavens. You have yet to conquer immortality. Therefore, the submerged devolution within the infernal worlds awaits you. I am now with my open soul going to narrate to you a mystical and transcendental experience. Please listen to me. The pleasant night was injuring me with its chaste beauty and with its whole brilliantly incentive principle. We, a group of Gnostic brethren, while holding our hands, were performing a magical chain on the patio of the house. We prayed very much, yes. Then, we made an invocation. We called Anael, the angel of love. On top of the temperate walls, the limpid foliage, swinging with the breeze, was delectably laughing, and the silvery crowned ripples of the rivulet were shaking out the refreshing grassel of its laugh. A clear and sweet voice disquieted my senses. Was this a voice of a siren or lullaby from the sea? Behold! 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 The angel Anael is approaching. Yes. Yes, we all answered. Our eyes attentively gazed at a flock of white doves who happily soared aloft of our abode. I still remember that bird of silver and fire, Anael, so pure, so tender, so soft. This one was the guide. Anael. Anael. Anael, we all exclaimed. That night was sweet and pleasant, tenuous and fragrant. It had the taste of the roses. A pause came after so many joyful shouts. We waited. We sighed. Those sublime birds disappeared within the mystery, and then 3 leisurely, rhythmic knocks solemnly resounded on the door of the house. I, myself, opened it impetuously. There they are. They are the ones. They have arrived. This is what we, all the brethren from that group, exclaimed. We all went out to welcome the group of beautiful, heavenly, and terribly divine children. They were carrying flowers in their hands. While in their presence, one feels as if one is reviving the infancy. I felt the desire of playing. We can verify that these very beautiful creatures were dressed with the wedding garment of the soul, the solar bodies. Inside the soul of these abundantly pure angels, we do not find anything that in one or another way could be similar to the eye of psychology. Only the being shines inside those children. It is obvious that those holy gods intensely love this wretched, suffering humanity. It is obvious that in a remote past these venerable ones worked in the forge of the Cyclops. Their glorious bodies make them immortals in all of the departments of the kingdom. It is not difficult to guess that they radically eliminated the lunar bodies. I humbly prostrated myself at the feet of Anael, the angel of love. I needed to consult him about something. His answer left me completely satisfied. Many years have passed now, and I still continue meditating. It is impossible to forget all of this. Now, by researching my old chronicles with the constancy of a clergyman in a cell, I write so that others can read. We, the brethren of that group, still remember the presence of those ineffable beings, their enchanting voices, their majestic countenance. The light from the pure spirit touched our temples. It hit our backs with a resplendence that was truncated into lights and shadows, moving as a dance, with quietude in its sculpture and with the timid violence of the air seeming like clouds, treasures, and joy entwining the head of hair. As does the prism, the waves of light, very clear and empty, quenched our thirst, while sinking us without voices. A pure fire, within slow resounding whirlwinds. I return into my solitude, to reflect and meditate. Whence this manifold creation sprang? Who knows the secret? Who proclaimed it here? The gods themselves, these divine angelic creatures, came later into being, gazing into eternity, ere the foundations of the earth were laid. Thou wert. And when the subterranean flame shall burst its prison and devour the frame, thou shalt be still as thou wert before, and knew no change, when time shall be no more. Prior to the dawning of the dawn of the Mahamanvantara, the unique form of existence without limits, infinite and without cause, was extended alone in a dream without fantasies. Thus, life was unconsciously palpitating inside the abstract absolute space, within the whole extension of that omnipresence, which is perceived by the open eye of Dangme. God never dies. This is what is stated by the hairy bards crowned with laurels. We sing unto the nightfall of the gods. The death of the Eternal One is very relative. Let us raise our chalice and pray. When the cosmic night arrives, the army of the voice submerges itself within the bosom of the profound, absolute, and unconditioned space. It is obvious that God then ceases to exist within the universe. The great voice re-emerges when the aurora of the great day begins to dawn. Then, the Spirit of God is moving upon the face of the waters. Chapter 23. Constructing Molecules. René Dubois stated, "Science's great spectacle still continues with its role. However, now it is represented hidden behind the curtain without an auditorium or connoisseurs. Only the performers intervene. Near the stages entrance some few loquacious and wrongly informed charlatans sell confused imitations of the great rites to the public. Miracles at a low price have been promised to the world, though they no longer partake of the glorious mysteries. In the dawning of life, the complex matter of our bodies was found latent within the elemental atomic germs. However, very slowly it developed itself throughout the uncountable centuries. It is obvious and clear that four basic types of molecules always intervene within the various processes of gradual transformation of organic matter. Proteins form part of the most important structural matter of all organisms. It is evident that proteins in the form of enzymes concretely serve as specific catalyzers. Without them, the vital chemical reactions would develop very slowly or would absolutely not develop. Any given molecule of protein has hundreds of amino acids. These amino acids are intelligently linked in a marvelous chain that tends to form a spiral, along with atoms of hydrogen, which, as a very wise nexus, firmly hold these spirals in their position. It has been told to us that although some 80 amino acids are very well known, only 20 intervene in the elaboration of proteins. In like manner, as the 28 letters of the Spanish alphabet can be arranged in order to form infinite combinations, likewise, these amino acids can be arranged to form infinite combinations which clearly express their functions. Nucleic acids. The essential quality of life depends upon these admirable substances for the continuity of existence. The form known as DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, never leaves the cell's nucleus. It preserves itself as a store or depository of instructions for the correct functioning of the cell. It is unquestionable that its ally, the RNA, ribonucleic acid, is the transmitter of instructions that come from the DNA's message and are carried to the portions of the cell that elaborate proteins. The amino acids are very wisely entwined or concatenated during the process in order to satisfy the norm of DNA. The DNA molecules consist of two spiral chains. These are magisterially ordained in such a way that resemble a double helix spiral staircase of an extended longitude. The splendid sides of this formidable spiral staircase consist of units of sugar and phosphate. The steps or ascents are linked purines and pyrimidines. There are only 4 purines and pyrimidines inside the DNA: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. In a very subtle way, these are indeed in charge of transmitting messages similar to the punctuated and linear code of the Morse alphabet. Those inside the RNA are the same ones with the exception of thymine, which is substituted by uracil. Lipids. These are a fundamental group of organic greasy matters that store vital energy and form part of the structure of the cell. Their molecules consist of atoms of hydrogen and oxygen linked in a complex assemblage of atoms of carbon. Polysaccharides. These are a chain of sugar molecules that accumulate energy and that compose the valuable cellular walls in a form of cellulose. It has been stated to us that a cellulose molecule consists of 2,000 units of glucose. Eminent scientists emphasize the idea that the polysaccharides form part of the numerous families of the carbohydrates. It is indubitable that the 4 primary elements of these vital substances, namely hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, are precisely the most active chemical principles of the universe. It is worthy to mention the very interesting fact, that only the proteins and nucleic acids contain hydrogen. It is notorious that sulfur is found within many proteins, since phosphorus is an indispensable component of nucleic acids. Back in the year 1930, it was discovered that the atmospheres of the planets Jupiter and Saturn were very rich in methane and ammoniac, and subsequently it was verified that methane was very abundant on Uranus and Neptune. These investigations contributed in order to enforce the idea that the primeval atmosphere of the planet Earth belonged to the methane-ammoniac type. Indeed, Urey mistakenly supposed that ultraviolet light and electrical discharges could equally liberate molecules within the atmosphere and allow them to cluster in order to form more complex organic compounds. They investigated for the synthesis of the organic compounds clue. Miller supposed that the origin of life is found within an archaic atmosphere dominated by hydrogen. Certainly. However, it is unquestionable that hydrogen in itself is the first emanation of the universal primordial matter, Mula Prakriti. However, if we want to know the origin of life, we must delve deeply into profoundness. The word matter is very discussable since it encloses many concepts. The dictionary explains it as material, stuff, wood, concern, action, thing of affair, cause, occasion, substance, nature, etc. Therefore, matter is something very intellective, abstract, vague, undefined, since it virtually includes, contains, a whole procession of ideas. The term procession etymologically signifies theory, when it is used in the learned style or treated in the style of ancient Greece, meaning theory of the Panathenea. Matter in itself as substance, per se, surpasses, transcends, exceeds the narrow frame of Euclid's three-dimensional geometry. The infinite processes of matter are multidimensional, this is obvious. Hence, perceiving the things from this angle, it is obvious that the Earth with all of its varieties of phenomena existed before, within the fourth dimension. Continuing with the inductive system, we can and must even emphasize the idea of an existence even more ancient for our world within that which is called the fifth dimension. The Jivan Mukta, the adept or authentic Mahatma, by means of the open eye of Dangme, goes even further. He discovers traces of our world within the sixth and seventh dimensions. This open eye is the purely spiritual sight of the adept. However, it is necessary to clarify that this is not clairvoyance, but rather It is the faculty of spiritual intuition, through which the direct and true knowledge can be acquired. The Neoplatonic and Oriental deductive system, opposite to the Aristotelian inductive system, allows us to comprehend the staggered descent of our world from the unknowable to the knowable, gradually passing through one dimension into another, until crystallizing in its present dense form. It is obvious that during the planetary descent, all of the vital germs develop themselves by constructing molecules. It is unquestionable, effective, and real that cells, organs, and organisms develop themselves with atoms and molecules. Inside any given living germ, the cosmic energy operates in three modes, namely, centrifugal, centripetal, and neutral. If the first of these three forces become extroverted and basic for the action, it is obvious that the second one introverts itself, attracting atoms and organizing molecules, while the third one serves as a point of support. The planet Earth, throughout its staggered descent, finally penetrated into this three-dimensional region, carrying a formidable cargo of germs and organisms. It is evident for any Mahatma that the most valuable treasure brought by this great ship called Earth was the first human root race, who lived on the North Polar Cap. It is unquestionable that at that time, the present North and South Poles were located on the equatorial zone. It is evident, positive, and authentic that if we exclude the faculty of intuition, the internal and spiritual eye of the adept, then we lamentably fail in these types of investigations, because the first 500 million of years related with the whole geological history of the Earth in this region of three dimensions seems buried or lost in a definitive, radical, and absolute way. The task of reconstructing the mode in which life and its primeval forms might have emerged becomes very difficult indeed, due to the total lack of information regarding fossils from that epoch. Apart from some vestiges of algae, the most dignified, trustful data dates from about 500 million of years, that is to say, from an epoch much prior to the era in which the most important events of evolution took place. We can affirm with a certain degree of scientific trust that cellular life, as we know it on the surface of the Earth, exists in millions of other places of the universe. Nevertheless, this does not deny the possibility of other types of matter that could be called living matters existing, which in accordance with the pattern that we have formed in relation with our Earth might be strange for us. Accordingly, we have transferred life from the limited place that a little while ago was considered a special and unique event, into a state of multidimensional, widely expanded matter within the whole universe. 5 are the indispensable basic factors for the transformation of matter into living cells, namely: 1. Formation of the simplest organic compounds. 2. Transformation of these ones into more complex organic compounds. 3. Origin of chemical products, the clue of life, such as the proteins and nucleic acids. 4. Origin of structures and metabolisms, chemical energy. 5. Evolution of metabolism. Apply the 5 basic factors of this formula to the organism in process of crystallization, and the problem of the origin of life is solved. Clarification: I am utilizing the term crystallization in a convenient form, so that it can indicate or point to the arrival or entrance of any organism into the three-dimensional region. It is obvious that the organisms in their way of crystallization were submitted to incessant preterite evolutions within the superior dimensions of nature. Therefore, to search for the origin of life exclusively in this three-dimensional region would be an absurdity, an incoherence. Chapter 24. The Revolution of the Consciousness. Fruitful blossoming gardens of solar splendor that burst with delicious fruits are like rivals to honey's sweetness. Like Orpheus, who tames the fierceness of the brutes with the sound of his lyre, whosoever possesses the attributes of a troubadour shall clarify everything with the word. Thus, the darkness is dissolved, light is created. Lo, and behold that I advance towards the abode of the King of Gods, the Father who is in secret. A winged spirit leads me. Hail, O thou who soars throughout the expansions of heaven and who illuminates the sun of the white crown, the Son of Man. Be granted that my white crown, which shines on the head of the saints, could be under thy protection. Be granted that I can live at thy side, Father of mine. Lo, and behold that I have collected and reunited all of the dispersed members of this great God. Now, after having entirely created a heavenly path, I advance throughout this way. Book of the Occult Abode, c. LXXVI. If the people would understand what it is to collect and reunite all of the dispersed members, the distinct fractions of our interior being, which are unfortunately bottled up within too many subconscious elements. If those wretched mortals would comprehend the necessity of becoming integral, unitotal, complete. If indeed they would resolve to die from moment to moment, then, indeed, they would radically cease to exist in order to definitively be. In the sunny country of Kem, during the dynasty of the pharaoh Khephren, I comprehended the necessity of returning into the upright path, the necessity of shaping my own heavenly path. Strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto light, and few there be that find it. Matthew 7 verse 13. One man among thousands strives for perfection. Among the few who strive for perfection, perhaps one is successful, and among the perfect ones a rare one knows me perfectly. Bhagavad Gita c. 7:3. Of 1,000 who seek me, one finds me. Of 1,000 who find me, one follows me. Of the 1,000 who follow me, one is mine. The gods and those few ones who in the world have become human know very well that the crowds always move themselves inside the circle of the terrible necessity. Read chapter 22 of this book. When recapitulating mysteries in the sacred land of the boisterous Nile, I was able to remember. Frightful difficulties. The path of the razor's edge is filled with dangers from within and without. The path of the revolution of the consciousness severs itself from the ways of the evolution and devolution. Jesus, the great Kabir, stated, "Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross and follow me." Mark 8 verse 34. These are the three factors for the inner revolution. The dogma of evolution is reactionary. Therefore, let us talk about mystical insurrection. After having suffered too much, I, an ancient Tibetan Lama, was initiated into the Egyptian mysteries. What grief the death of my brother caused me. That was something decisive for me. Poor little boat of mine, broken between reefs, without sails, without rum, and alone among the waves. Fortunately, I was assisted, and I studied a lot. I entered into the priesthood college as any neophyte, and after successive exaltations, I became a hierophant. That I became both a physician and a priest at one time? This is something that I cannot deny. I was traveling daily on my camel, carrying a lot of remedies for my patients, a noble Galenic mission. To forget my haven in that sacred land of Hermes is impossible. It was an ancient, ancestral house surrounded by very old walls. Lytolantes, as always, was my priestess spouse. She does not ignore this. She still remembers. I have the high honor of having been the educator of the pharaoh Khephren. I was the preceptor of that young man, and I do not regret it, since later on, he became a great sovereign. I remember terrible things. Those who violated their oath of silence and divulged the great arcanum were condemned to the death penalty. They were beheaded, their hearts were wrenched out, and their ashes were cast into the four winds. The execution was performed on a stony patio surrounded by terrible walls upon which skins of crocodiles and mysterious hieroglyphics were shown. The unutterable secret is hidden within the Sahaja Methuna, sex yoga, with its lingam yoni and pudenda. The Levantine Egyptian light varies in colors of ineffable vigor. It develops infinite powers within each soul. Spirited light from the hoard of the sacred river, which flows upon the acacia's foliage, is a very sacred symbol of resurrected masters. Light, which is dearest to the fresh rice fields, which perfumes the flower of the lemon tree, is as fertile in festival songs as in the sweet twilight of January. In the profound night of all ages, the words of the priest of Sais are still resounding, alas, Solon, Solon, my son. The day will come on which men will laugh at our sacred hieroglyphics. They will say that we, the ancient people, were worshipping idols. Chapter 25. Aleya and Paramartha. Aleya is the anima mundi of Plato, the supersoul of Emerson, submitted to incessant periodical changes. Alaya is in itself eternal and immutable. However, it suffers tremendous changes during the Mahamanvantaric manifestation. The Yogacaryas from the Mahayana school state that Alaya is the personification of the illuminating void. It is unquestionable that Alaya is the living foundation of the seven cosmoses. When the mind is quiet and in a profound silence, then the soul escapes in order to immerse itself within the great Alaya of the universe. Many years ago, during meditation, I experienced this truth. Unfortunately, in that epoch I had not yet dissolved the pluralized I. Therefore, terror damaged my experience. I definitively felt myself being lost within the void of the Buddhist annihilation, the infinite ocean of incomprehensible light beyond the body, the affections, and the mind. This was a radical oblivion from myself. Thus, the consciousness, freed from its egoic condition, was lost as a drop within the sea. That void seemed to become more profound. A frightful abyss. I ceased to exist. I felt myself becoming worlds, flowers, birds, fish, radiant suns, a humble plant and gigantic tree, an insignificant insect which endures only for a summer afternoon, and a rebel eagle. That ocean of my being continued extending itself even more. The non-personification seemed to become more and more profound. Not even the memory of my human form remained. I was the whole thing and nothingness at one time. One step more and what would become of me? Oh, what a terror! Thus, that ocean of my being continued to frightfully extend itself. So then, what about my beloved individuality? It is obvious that it was also condemned to death. Suddenly, feeling terror, horror, panic, fear, I felt myself withdrawing within myself and I lost the ecstasy. I returned as Aladdin's genie back into the bottle. I entered into time. I remained bottled up within the ego. Wretched Mephistopheles, the unfortunate one, was cowardly trembling. This is how Satan is. It is obvious that the disgraceful one had made me lose my Buddhist satori, the samadhi. Alaya, even being eternal and immutable in its essence, reflects itself within every object of the universe, just as the moon does in the clear and tranquil water. Let us now talk about Paramartha. The Yogacaryas interpret this Sanskrit term at their own whim. Their opinion is that it depends on many other things, Paratantra. Everybody is free to think as he wishes. The Madhyamikas emphatically affirm that Paramartha is exclusively limited to Parinishpana, absolute perfection. It is unquestionable that the Yogacaryas believe and sustain that in this valley of samsara only Samvrdhasesha, relative truth, exists. It is indubitable that the Madhyamikas teach the existence of Paramarthasatya, absolute truth. By no means can a Gnostic Arhat reach Paramartha, absolute knowledge, if previously he does not identify himself with Parinirvana. It has been very wisely stated to us that Parakalpita and Paratantra are Paramartha's two great enemies. Parakalpita, Kuintag in the Tibetan language, is the vain error of those who are fascinated in this valley of tears, wretched people with egoic consciousness, unfortunate people who adore their I. Paratantra is the phenomenalistic world. Woe to those who do not know how to discover the causes of existence. A relatively long time ago, while being in profound meditation, I was a witness to something unusual. Indeed, I saw with mystical astonishment two adepts who, after having achieved a complete identification with Parinirvana, attained the final liberation. These brethren, attired with their tunics of white linen and their heads covering with a mantle of immaculate whiteness that reached until their feet, entered within the abstract absolute space. Frankly, since I still have not lost my capacity for astonishment, I felt myself amazed, bewildered. Thus, with wonderment, I accompanied them until the ring pass not, the gate of the universe. I saw them penetrate into the uncreated light of the Absolute filled with infinite humbleness and veneration. They passed far beyond the gods and humans. They became Paramarthasatyas. Nevertheless, they submerged themselves within that as simple apprentices. This is because successive mystical exaltations also exist within the Absolute, which are far beyond any comprehension for us. Chapter 26: Birth Control. The gonads of a female are the ovaries, breasts, and the uterus. The gonads of a male are the testicles, the phallus, and the prostate gland. In synthesis, such generative glands are marvelous sexual microlaboratories. It is unquestionable that the cited glands possess a double function, since they have internal and external secretions. If, indeed, it is true that the ovaries produce the ovum, then it is no less true that the ovaries also have the incretion of a formidable endocrine substance that vitalizes the woman and makes her feminine. It is true, effective, and real that the testicles have the ens seminis, the entity of semen, as external secretion. The sperm float within the semen. They factually become the vital germs of existence. The intimate hormonal incretion of the surface of the testicles is the marvelous power that gives energy to the male and is what makes him essentially masculine. The normal male is the one who has normal masculine gonads. The normal female is the one who has normal feminine gonads. The ovaries very wisely regulate the distribution of calcium in the woman. This is already proven. Excessive number of pregnancies due to many circumstances originate the terrible cases of osteomalacia or deformities because of softening and curving of the bones. This is very common in those densely populated countries of the world in which we live. It has been scientifically verified that after several pregnancies, indeed, a progressive loss of the reserves of calcium occurs. Then the bones begin to give away. Any physician can verify that many women suffer disturbances in their teeth during their pregnancy. The testicles regulate the calcium in the male's bones, giving strength and stability to them. Through many years of observation and experience, those who are wise have verified that, as a general rule, the male with very strong bones is sexually very virile. It is now completely proven by means of profound scientific observations that some of the endocrine glands intelligently act as accelerators for the sexual glands and others decrease such an action. Eminent biologists of whom we cannot doubt learned that the thymus gland holds the sexual appetite. It is known that the ovaries emit an ovum every 28 days in accordance with the lunar cycle. It is evident that such a feminine gamete is collected inside one of the fallopian tubes and is conducted into the uterus, where it has to encounter the masculine germ, sperm, if another life is to begin. It is demonstrated that there does not exist a more impelling force in its expression like the exertion performed between the masculine and feminine germs when they want to encounter each other. Birth control is a crime, however, conception control is an obligation. In these times of worldly crisis and demographic explosion, 3 absurd systems for control of conception exist, namely: 1. Physical. 2. Chemical. 3. Biological. Pessaries, membranes, and other intrauterine devices, condoms, etc., are included within the first system. The second system is comprised of spermicidal pomades with a base of arsenic, mercury, etc., cellular venom. Contraceptive pills, fallopian tube ligature or spermatic cord ligature, vasectomy, ovulin 28, and ovular 21, retex, etc., are found included in the third system. It is obvious that all these contraceptive physical procedures that are 100% mechanistic, in addition to originating organic destruction that is often irreparable, also corrupt human ethics in a radical way and conduce towards degeneration. It is unquestionable that any type of pomades which are applied in the vagina cause chemical irritations and disequilibrium of the cells on the neck of the womb. It is indubitable that all of the biological contraceptives, the ones which prevent the descent of the ovum into the womb, cause a frightful disequilibrium on the marvelous axle between the hypophysis and the gonads. It is indispensable to comprehend in depth the tremendous power of those vital agents called lysosomes, because without them the nucleus of the organic cell can never be kept alive. It is by all means manifest, clear, and positive that the stabilized lysosomes on the spermatozoa and ovum originate healthy and strong creatures. The contraceptive pills and the rest of the biological and chemical elements destroy the lysosomes from the spermatozoa and ovum. Therefore, this originates sick, insane, paralytic creatures, deaf and mute people, blind children, idiots, homosexuals and lesbians, etc. The scientists have verified that the pomades which are applied on the neck of the womb with the purpose of blocking it destroy the cellular lysosomes. These destroyed lysosomes act freely, annihilating cells and originating ulcers and cancer within the vaginal walls and the neck of the womb. The lysosomes, in a completely harmonious activity within the living cell, constitute the foundation of existence. Various forms of lysosomes exist, namely lipase, fats, catalase, oxidase, peroxidase, protease, proteins, hydrates, hydrogen. It is obvious that the lysosome in itself is an electromagnetic enzymatic center. The chemosin lies within the living nucleus of the cell. When it irradiates towards the periphery, it originates the intracellular lysosomes by means of the law of the eternal heptaparaparshinok. The superficial tension, the osmotic and oncotic pressure of all the cells, red cells, spermatozoa, etc., are stabilized when in harmony with the infinite, when in contact with nature. The detergents, insecticides, spermicidal pomades, drugs, animal hormones, carbon monoxide, etc., destroy the lysosomes from the spermatozoa and ovum, etc. The vital air, far away from the cities, the prana from the forests, the sun, the pure water, etc., fortifies and enriches the organism with prodigious lysosomes. Certainly, the lysosomes are the active agents of the organism's vital depth, the lingam sarira. The physical, chemical, and biological procedures in fashion for birth control destroy the lysosomes. Therefore, they originate frightful sicknesses, they terminate life. The international Gnostic movement has revolutionary scientific procedures and methods for conception control. Our system has formidable advantages, such as not destroying the lysosomes. Our plan constructs lysosomes, it enriches the human organism, it vitalizes it. I want to emphatically refer to the Hindu Sahajamethuna, the famous Italian carezza. Abundant documentation exists about all of this within the famous Hindu Kama Kulpa and within the works of all the medieval alchemists like Sendivogius, Paracelsus, Nicholas Flamel, Raymond Lully, etc. It is lamentable that the Hindu Kama Sutra was adulterated and deformed in a very monstrous, sinister, and abominable way. The biologists have evidenced through many years of observation and direct experience that the sexual glands are not closed capsules, since they excrete and increte hormones. The root of the word hormone comes from the Greek language horm and signifies anxiety of becoming, strength of becoming. The astonishing vital power of the sexual hormones is evident. Therefore, to save them, to learn to increte them, to make them return inwardly and upwardly with the sane purpose of enriching life is not a crime. It has been completely proven that the sexual hormonal incretion intensifies the hormonal production of all the endocrine glands. The sanguineous torrent conduces sexual hormones, it transports them, puts them in contact with all of those glandular microlaboratories. The non-ejaculation of semen, not reaching the orgasm, is radical in order to avoid conception and in order to intensify the hormonal incretion. If the male avoids the ejaculation of semen and if the woman also avoids the orgasm, then control of the problem of conception is resolved. Thelema, willpower, is what is required during the sexual act, in order to withdraw in time, prior to the sexual spasm. The refrained sexual desire will make the creative energy ascend. This is how we perform the semination of the brain and the cerebration of the semen. It is obvious that the semen can transform itself into energy. It is unquestionable that the sexual energy rises up towards the brain. Specific nervous canals for the ascension of the sexual energy exist. Unfortunately, the scalpel cannot find them because these canals belong to the fourth dimension. I am now concretely referring to the pair of nervous cords known in India with the names of Ida and Pingla. In the male, Ida starts in the right testicle and Pingla starts in the left one. In the female, they start in the ovaries and are reversed. These two very fine nervous canals become amiably knotted in the coccygeal bone. Then afterwards, they ascend as two entwined serpents throughout the dorsal spine until the brain. The continuous ascension of the sexual energy throughout these nervous canals radically transforms us by converting us into mutants, genii. We are concretely referring to the Sahaja Maithuna, sex yoga, white tantra. This is the unique healthy system in order to resolve the very grave problem of demographic explosion. This is the clue in order to control human conception in an intelligent way and without any harm. It is obvious that for lustful people, non-ejaculation is a frightful sacrifice. It is opportune to affirm that nature does not perform leaps. Therefore, the apprentice can and must perform this change little by little. If indeed what we want is the consolidation, the affirming, the fixation of our system, I consider it necessary to start with brief, very short-lived sexual practices, as much as 5 minutes daily. It is unquestionable that afterwards time can be prolonged in each practice. The great athletes of sex. Yoga are used to practicing the Sahaja Maithuna for 1 hour daily. In no way is it advantageous to start with long sexual practices. This change must be performed in a methodical way and with much patience, without ever dismaying. The movement of the phallus inside the vagina must be slow and very soft, avoiding violence. It is convenient to remember that if the sexual movements are performed very strongly, then the outcome is the spasm with the lamentable loss of seminal liquor. When the danger of ejaculating comes forth, it can be avoided by means of controlling the breath. In this case, the male will withdraw his phallus very fast from within the vagina and will lie in dorsal decubitus, lying down on his back. Afterwards, he will retain his breath by closing his nostrils with his thumb and index finger. If he has to inhale again, he can do it, but he should try to hold his breath as much as is possible. In those moments, he must intensely refrain and imagine that his sexual energy ascends throughout the two canals, Ida and Pingla, towards his brain. The same procedure can and must be utilized by the woman in order to avoid the orgasm and the loss of her sexual feminine liquor. In the sacred land of the Vedas, any female yogi who knows the Sahaja Maithuna knows how to control the danger of the spasm by means of the retention of her breath. If while performing this effort the neophyte fails in the beginning, he must not dismay. In the end, with much patience and efforts, he will learn. After many years of patient learning, the Sahaja Maithuna will become a couple's normal function, the standard of their sexual life. One among the marvelous advantages of our system is the advantage of preserving sexual potency during the whole life. In our 1970 to 1971 Christmas message, we teach the practical way in order to engender healthy, intelligent, and strong children by will and within a properly planned method. Chapter 27. The Egyptian Sahu. Golden clouds bathe the wall. The black crows, still not whitened by the alchemist's work, are cawing on top of their nests, upon which they obviously wish to keep lounging around. Meanwhile, the bride, the lonely and young soul, bottled up within the ego, melancholically sighs. Her hands, for a while, abandon the loom where her fate is incessantly woven and unwoven. Thus, she directs her eyes towards the blue curtain of heaven which isolates her from the world. Wretched Buddhata, unhappy soul, she is certainly very lonely. Her fiancé, her eternal beloved, the spirit, is journeying in remote lands. All the nights lonely in her bedroom, solitude oppresses her heart and her tears fall as mild rain, fecundating the earth. The moon is gone, and the Pleiades are not shown. It is midnight. Time is slipping away. Meanwhile, lying on her bed she rests. Oh, how lonely she is! As the wind from the forest, which incrementally shakes the corpulent oaks. So Eros shakes and agitates her, wretched isolated one. Ah! If she could attire herself with the wedding gown. If she could betroth herself with her beloved one. Unfortunately, the wretched one is dressed with lunar rags, with the suit of desire and animal mind. If she could know the secret of the philosophical stone. If she could understand it, if she would not reject it. Oh, ageless stone, so old as the world. Why do people hate you so much? It is written with golden letters that Hahila, daughter of Nadir, loves Sheben, the most intrepid among the warriors. You know this. The clue, the secret of the philosophical stone, lies in sex. Read the previous chapter of this book. The soul can elaborate to Soma Heliacon, the wedding garment, the Egyptian Sahu, only based on incessant sexual transmutations, by working with the Sahaja Methuna. Wretched solitary soul, dress yourself with the nuptial attire, betroth yourself with your beloved one so that you can sit at the table with the guests. The kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again, he sent forth other servants, saying, Tell them which are bidden, Behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come unto the marriage. But they made light of it, and went their ways. One to his farm, another to his merchandise, and the remnant took his servants, and entreated them spitefully, and slew them. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and he sent forth his armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Then saith he to his servants, The wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy. Go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye find, bid to the marriage. So those servants went out into the highways, and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good, and the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there a man which had not on a wedding garment, who had not fabricated the Egyptian Sahu, the solar bodies. And he saith unto him, Friend, how camest thou in hither not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Then said the king to the servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. Matthew 22 verses 1 to 14. The Egyptian book of the occult abode states, Go across to the farthest limits of heaven. Then, just as becoming Horus, thou hast obtained a glorious body. The Sahu, the wedding garment of the soul, in like manner thou hast obtained the crown of Nemes. Indeed, thy word of power overtakes until the farthest limits of heaven. Therefore, she took possession of the divine attributes of Horus, the being, which are those of Osiris, the inner logos of each one, in the region of the dead, in the region where live those who have dissolved the I. Lo and behold that Horus is the being, repeats for me the consecrated words pronounced by his father, the being of the being. In the day of the funerals, of the I make the double lion head God who guards the crown of Nemes, the crown of sanctity, granted unto thee. So that thou canst soar throughout the roots of heaven and see what exists until the furthest limits of the horizon. God grant me that I might be admitted into the occult secret, and that the contemplation of the mystery of the birth of divinity be granted unto me. Lo, and behold that Horus dresses my members with his glorious body. It is written in the mysterious pages of the great book of life that it is necessary to be born again in order to enter into the kingdom of heaven. This is the second birth of which the great Kabir Jesus spoke to the Rabbi Nicodemus. Except a man be born of water, semen, and of the Spirit, fire, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. The book of the occult abode states, Lo, and behold that I am born, and I come into the world in the universe of Reistau, the kingdom of God. Thanks to my priests, or gurus, libations in front of Osiris, the inner logoi. I enjoy of the blessings among the glorious Sahu bodies. I am welcome among the spirits of Reistau, the world of the Logos. And there I grow. To be born in the Reistau with the Egyptian Sahu, marvelous synthesis of the solar bodies, is the extraordinary fruit of the fig tree. This tree has been, is, and always will be the living symbol of sex. Woe unto the sterile fig tree. The Christian gospel states the following. Now in the morning as he, the great Kabir Jesus, returned into the city, he hungered. And when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it, and found nothing thereon, but leaves only, and said unto it, Let no fruit grow on thee henceforward forever. And presently the fig tree withered away. Chapter 28. The unconscious itself. In accordance with Hegel, the unconscious itself would never have undertaken the vast and laborious task of developing the universe, except with the hope of reaching a clear consciousness of itself. The term unconscious is in its depth very ambiguous, doubtful, confusing, and discussable. However, we may use this term in a conventional way in order to indicate or point to a creative mystery, something that is much beyond the consciousness. It is unquestionable that Parabrahman, the universal spirit of life, transcends all of that which is called consciousness. Therefore, it is obvious that we may call it unconsciousness. Within this strictly human theme, we can and must even emphasize the idea that before transcending the consciousness, we first need to awaken it. Certainly, the idea about the absolute consciousness behind any phenomena is extremely vague, incoherent, and imprecise. It is absurd to confuse the consciousness with the absolute being. Unfortunately, many philosophers fall in those aberrations of the mind. Sat, the unmanifested absolute, has nothing to do with the consciousness, because the latter, as brilliant as it might be, is like a miserable wax candle before the uncreated light of that which has no name. Unquestionably, the Schelling and Fichte schools have become greatly severed from the archaic and primeval concept of an absolute principle. They have only reflected upon an aspect of the fundamental idea of the Vedanta. The Absoluter Geist, vaguely suggested by von Hartmann in his pessimistic philosophy about the unconscious itself, is perhaps, in the least, the major equivalent to the European speculation in regards to the Hindu Advaita doctrines. Nonetheless, it is also very distant from reality when the error is committed of identifying the absolute being with that which is called consciousness. The human biped, or better if we say that homunculi who is mistakenly called human, is incapable of elaborating a single concept, unless that concept is related with completely empirical phenomena. Therefore, due to his strictly intellectual and animal constitution, he is unable to lift even the tip of the veil that covers the majesty of the abstract absolute space. The cosmic consciousness, the great alaya of the universe, must awaken within each human being. Nevertheless, we make emphasis of the necessity of not confusing the consciousness with the absolute. The finite cannot conceive the infinite, neither can its own type of mental experiences be applied to itself. How can it be stated that the unconscious itself and the absolute itself cannot even have one instinctive impulse or hope in order to attain clear consciousness of itself? The necessity of attaining the awakening of the consciousness is indisputable, if what we sincerely want is illumination. Such a superlative awakening, without previously having passed through the terrible Buddhist annihilation, would be impossible. I want to emphatically refer to the destruction of the I, to the death of the myself. Two types of illumination exist. The first one is called death water because it has bonds. The second one is praised as the great life because it has no bonds. It is direct experience of the illuminating void. In order to experience in a complete way the illuminating aspect of the consciousness, we must first of all and by all means become conscious of our own selves. It would not be possible to submerge ourselves within the current of sound, within the illuminating void, without previously turning asunder the bonds that in one way or another bind us to the consciousness. We transform the subconsciousness into consciousness with the annihilation of the ego. However, afterwards, we must destroy the shackles which connect us to the consciousness. The illuminating void is the unconsciousness itself. Here we are utilizing the term unconsciousness in the sense of something that is far beyond the consciousness. Have you ever heard about anupadika? The strict and rigorous sense of this word signifies without parents, without progenitors. Osiris is the father who is in secret, the particular monad of everyone. Isis is the duad, the feminine aspect of the father, the divine mother Kundalini. Horus is the innermost, our divine spirit, the triad. It is easy to understand that when Horus becomes victorious in the battles against the red demons, devil eyes, then he gives to himself the luxury of swallowing his own soul. The best comes after this banquet. Father, mother, and son, in other words, Osiris, Isis, Horus, these three divine fires with a diamond soul are mixed, fused, and integrated amongst themselves, in order to form one single flame, an Anupadaka. Therefore, the occult Lord, the one who is immersed within the absolute, within the inexhaustible and inconceivable bliss, the Anupadaka, cannot have a father, since by himself he is self-existent and one with the universal spirit of life. The mystery of the hierarchy of the Anupadakas within the abstract absolute space is far beyond all possible comprehension for us. Chapter 29. Green Fireballs. In these moments of worldly crisis, the modern scientists are confronting an enigma from space. I want to emphatically refer to the mystery of the green fireballs. The green fireballs shine, sparkle, flare, then afterwards, as if they were turned off by a remote control switch, they vanish without leaving a single trace. It has been stated to us that the residents of Albuquerque, New Mexico are accustomed to these types of mysteries for the obvious reason of living next to the Los Alamos plant of atomic secrets. Travelers know very well that the military forces from Sandia Base are at the edge of the city. This is the place where, for the disgrace of this afflicted world, the terrible atomic bomb is armed. It is evident that the famous White Sands Laboratory, specialized manufacturer of controlled remote projectiles, is located in the same state. Nevertheless, in spite of all this secrecy, the inhabitants from that place felt bewildered. They became astonished and overwhelmed when they saw a brilliant ball of green fire silently passing through the infinite space. Many years ago, on a Sunday night of the past month of November, in some place of the desert which crosses through New Mexico, a mysterious event took place. On a clear night, the stars were shining in the sky. Along the road, a jeep was running at 25 miles per hour. This jeep was occupied by 3 students from the University of New Mexico: Ted Chamberlain, student of geology, his friends Gus Armstrong, who was the owner of the jeep, and Tom the buoy. It was close to 9 o'clock at night. These young men were coming back from a hunting trip in San Agustin, close to Magdalena. They were carrying their hunted carcass on the back of the jeep. Suddenly, the 3 of them became dazzled for a second. There, far away in the northeast of the sky, a gigantic ball of fire was burning while swiftly crossing the firmament. Its tail was off-white, yet the ball was of a radiant green color as if it was a light of a neon tube, or as Chamberlain stated, it was like copper when burning inside the furnace of a laboratory. "Look!" Armstrong shouted at the same time that he was losing control of his jeep, which he deviated from its route. As a result, his jeep tumbled and hurled all the occupants onto the sands of the desert. The ball of fire silently vanished over their heads. Minutes later, the 3 confused young men returned into the jeep and went towards Albuquerque. Something similar happened 2 nights before. Lourdes Miller and his wife from Palo Alto, California, were driving on Road 60, close to Glove, Arizona. Then, a little before nightfall, they saw a bluish-green ball which was burning up above their heads. Mr. Miller stated, "It was so intense that I almost veered from the road, because I became dazzled for a few seconds." A wise author stated, "This was not a common and current meteor." Observers have seen this green fireball in the sky for many miles, from Santa Fe, New Mexico to Vista, California. It is unquestionable, and by all means it stands out, that the green fireballs are absolutely different from common and current meteors. It is evident, and observers know very well, that these balls are bigger and more luminous than the beautiful Selene, the moon. It is obvious that not a single meteor is like that. Their frightful and delicate silence overwhelms. It is obvious that any meteor of that size will fall with a great noise. All of the witnesses agree that such balls move themselves in a straight line when inside of our atmosphere. It is clear that any big or small meteor falls in a concave curve when entering into our environment. Now, infinite conjectures exist about the mystery of these green fireballs. Some inhabitants from the west blame the ball for collapsing the water tower from Tucumari, New Mexico, that killed 4 people. This is because the investigations revealed that the fireball passed through in the precise moments when the collapse was occurring, due to a short circuit in the lines. Therefore, We are before a tremendous enigma, and frankly we have no other choice but to return again to the panspermia of Arrhenius. Read chapter 13. This great green fireball spectacle, which crosses the sky as lightning, is an unforgettable experience. The witnesses, as well as all of those thousands of Americans who have seen these balls in the southeast, question themselves, what is this? The international Gnostic movement answers this formidable question when stating, electric whirlwinds, vortexes of force, escape from all planets, carrying germs of life within their bosom. Electric whirlwinds arrive to planets carrying germs of life within their bosom. It is obvious that now our solar system, including our afflicted world, has arrived to a certain corner of the cosmos where these electric vortexes, carriers of vital germs, have made themselves visible. Thus, our solar system, in its eternal journey throughout the unalterable infinite, has arrived to a corner of the universe where never expected cosmic events may occur. Chapter 30. Truth Justice. In these moments of worldly crisis, the modern scientists are confronting an enigma from space. I want to emphatically refer to the mystery of the green fireballs. The green fireballs shine, sparkle, flare, then afterwards, as if they were turned off by a remote control switch, they vanish without leaving a single trace. It has been stated to us that the residents of Albuquerque, NM are accustomed to these types of mysteries for the obvious reason of living next to the Los Alamos plant of atomic secrets. Travelers know very well that the military forces from Sandia Base are at the edge of the city. This is the place where, for the disgrace of this afflicted world, the terrible atomic bomb is armed. It is evident that the famous White Sands Laboratory, specialized manufacturer of controlled remote projectiles, is located in the same state. Nevertheless, in spite of all this secrecy, the inhabitants from that place felt bewildered. They became astonished and overwhelmed when they saw a brilliant ball of green fire silently passing through the infinite space. Many years ago, on a Sunday night of the past month of November, in some place of the desert which crosses through New Mexico, a mysterious event took place. On a clear night, the stars were shining in the sky. Along the road, a jeep was running at 25 miles per hour. This jeep was occupied by 3 students from the University of New Mexico. Ted Chamberlain, student of geology, his friends Gus Armstrong, who was the owner of the jeep, and Tom Bibui. It was close to 9 o'clock at night. These young men were coming back from a hunting trip in San Agustin, close to Magdalena. They were carrying their hunted carcass on the back of the jeep. Suddenly, the 3 of them became dazzled for a second. There, far away in the northeast of the sky, a gigantic ball of fire was burning while swiftly crossing the firmament. Its tail was off-white, yet the ball was of a radiant green color as if it was a light of a neon tube, or as Chamberlain stated, it was like copper when burning inside the furnace of a laboratory. Look! Armstrong shouted at the same time that he was losing control of his jeep, which he deviated from its route. As a result, his jeep tumbled and hurled all the occupants onto the sands of the desert. The ball of fire silently vanished over their heads. Minutes later, the 3 confused young men returned into the jeep and went towards Albuquerque. Something similar happened 2 nights before. Lourdes Miller and his wife from Palo Alto, California, were driving on Road 60, close to Glove, Arizona. Then, a little before nightfall, they saw a bluish-green ball which was burning up above their heads. Mr. Miller stated, "It was so intense that I almost veered from the road, because I became dazzled for a few seconds." A wise author stated, this was not a common and current meteor. Observers have seen this green fireball in the sky for many miles, from Santa Fe, New Mexico, to Vista, California. It is unquestionable, and by all means it stands out, that the green fireballs are absolutely different from common and current meteors. It is evident, and observers know very well, that these balls are bigger and more luminous than the beautiful Selene, the moon. It is obvious that not a single meteor is like that. Their frightful and delicate silence overwhelms. It is obvious that any meteor of that size will fall with a great noise. All of the witnesses agree that such balls move themselves in a straight line when inside of our atmosphere. It is clear that any big or small meteor falls in a concave curve when entering into our environment. Now, infinite conjectures exist about the mystery of these green fireballs. Some inhabitants from the west blame the ball for collapsing the water tower from Tucumari, New Mexico, that killed 4 people. This is because the investigations revealed that the fireball passed through in the precise moments when the collapse was occurring, due to a short circuit in the lines. Therefore, we are before a tremendous enigma, and frankly we have no other choice but to return again to the panspermia of Arrhenius. Read chapter 13. This great green fireball spectacle, which crosses the sky as lightning, is an unforgettable experience. The witnesses, as well as all of those thousands of Americans who have seen these balls in the southeast, question themselves, what is this? The international Gnostic movement answers this formidable question when stating, electric whirlwinds, vortexes of force, escaped from all planets, carrying germs of life within their bosom. It is obvious that now our solar system, including our afflicted world, has arrived to a certain corner of the cosmos where these electric vortexes, carriers of vital germs, have made themselves visible. Thus, our solar system, in its eternal journey throughout the unalterable infinite, has arrived to a corner of the universe where never expected cosmic events may occur. During the night of mystery and within my gloomy abode, the terrible obscurity was growing from moment to moment. My lamp was sparkling palely. It was very slowly being agonized, while its livid reflections flowed with sinister clarity. From outside, in the street, the roughness of the inclement wind was making my windows rattle. The rain, falling with much clattering, was lashing the glass, and when the chaos, the tempest, scratched with its lightning sword, I then thought of the valley of darkness and the mansion of the perverse ones. Let my soul not to be subjugated nor dragged in captivity by the demons. Allow me to turn my face in front of the scaffold of Septu, the scaffold of karma. Praised be ye, O ye planetary spirits from the constellation of the Hips, Libra. The sacred book of the occult abode, crying out from the profound depth of the centuries, states, this is in regard to you, O divine knives of mysteries. Ye, the 2 divine arms of the cosmic scale, which illuminate and rejoice the universe and which lead young and old men in accordance with the rhythms of the epochs, behold. Behold, here is Thoth, the inner Buddha of each human being. Lord of mysteries. He precedes the libations in front of the Lord of millions of years, the universal logos of life, and opens for him the way through the firmament. Thoth is the one who immobilizes the hurricanes and who fastens them within their forts. He is certainly the interior Buddha of each living one, the Lord of powers. O ye, divine spirits of karma, remove misery and sufferings from me. Let my soul be pleasing to Ra, God. Hear me, humans and gods. This firmament of steel that I had protected from the world of Amenti, the region of the dead, the demon Apopi, the body of desires of every living one, has filled it with holes, since it is obvious that even the most perverse ones are accustomed to entering into that abode. Ah, when will the people stop confusing the authentic astral body with the demon Apopi? When will the pseudo-occultists comprehend that the body of desires cited by Theosophy is the frightful demon Apopi? Common and current people do not have an astral body, they only have a lunar vehicle of desires, the frightful demon Apopi. Let the humans and the dwellers of limbo hear me. Listen then. You need to build the astral body in the forge of the Cyclops. Ra abhors the demon Apopi. Therefore, it is natural that every authentic self-realized defunct one, after having dressed himself with the Egyptian Sahu, must eliminate the demon Apopi. The Book of the Dead states the following. Lo and behold that I come in among the heavenly hierarchies, and I deliver forever Ra from the dragon Apopi. I shall watch. I shall watch. Indeed, the dragon shall not ever come nigh unto him. I shall have power over the magical signs which are placed in front of me by the demon. I shall constantly receive sepulchral meals, and the god Thoth shall provide me with the magical power which should be the outcome of my deeds, of my karma, of life bygone. I shall make justice and truth to go around about the bows in the heavenly boat of my life, and I shall triumph among these divine hierarchies, and shall establish them within my heart for millions of years. The goddess Mot, justice, comes unto her Lord and God. You must remember that the functions of karma reside in the brilliant constellation of the hips, Libra. You must tremble in front of the divine knives of the law. Know that karma is paid not only for the evil that is done, but also for the good that could be done, yet is left undone. Remember the cycle of metamorphosis in the boat of Kepra, the ship of our own life. It is unquestionable that at any time it is necessary for you to descend into the infernal worlds, you must transform yourselves time and time again into crocodiles. It is obvious that any mystic exaltation is preceded by its correspondent humiliation. Whosoever wants to ascend must first of all descend. This is the law. It is indubitable that when the consciousness awakens, you transform yourselves into sparrow hawks with a human head. Thus, you can freely fly throughout starry space. Indeed, it is evident that you must transform yourselves into nagas, serpents. The day in which you shall be like the lotus will arrive. May the gods furnish me with thy throne, O Ra, furnishing me likewise with thy glorious body. I travelleth over the paths of Ra at daybreak to drive back the demon Net, the demon of evil will. He cometh in disguise behind a column of flames. Thus on a narrow and long corridor he unexpectedly attacks me. Verily, relevant to the dangers expected unto me I have been warned in advance. I attaineth unto thy boat, O Ra, and behold I sitteth therein. Thus, I receive the rightly deserved offerings. Chapter 31. The Homogeneous Basis. Revolutionary Gnosticism would never accept an anthropomorphic God in the style of the biblical Jehovah, seated up above on a throne of tyranny and hurling lightning and thunderbolts against this ant-hill-like human swarm. Nevertheless, it is well known that the international Gnostic movement has never been atheistic. Sincerely, we confess that force and forces are something very united in creation. God exists, exclaimed Victor Hugo. It is obvious that variety is unity. Polytheism synthesizes itself in the unity. The total addition of all of those heavenly beings, namely, Elohim, gods, Dayan Shohuns, Dhyani Buddhas, angels, devas, archangels, etc., constitute that which is commonly named God. We have always believed that mortality and immortality are something extremely relative, and even when this seems to be incredible, the fact is that even God dies at the end of the Mahamanvantara. This does not signify annihilation of that which is divine. It is unquestionable that when the great cosmic day finalizes, then the army of the voice, the word, that which is called God, ceases to exist within the cosmos and goes inside the absolute in order to be. To be is better than to exist, and the reason for the being to be is to be the being itself. Our legitimate existence is within the absolute. This is a not being, a non-existence to the human. Reasoning. The absolute is neither a god, nor a divine or human individual. It would be an absurdity to give form to that which has no form. It would be nonsense to try to anthropomorphize space. Indeed, the absolute is the unconditioned and eternal abstract space, very far beyond gods and humans. The heterogeneity unfolds itself from within the homogeneity when the dawn of the Mahamanvantara is dawning. Then, the army of the voices of God is reborn again in order to create anew. Biologists are presently searching for their homogeneous protoplasm, and chemists for their protyle, while the science of physics is laboriously searching to verify that this force, magnetism, heat, etc., are all correlations of electricity. When reaching this part of the present chapter, it is necessary that we speak a little bit more clearly. Therefore, allow me to state what I in a direct way have experienced for myself. It is unquestionable that I have passed through the mystical experience of many previous pralayas, because I am an archangel of former Mahamanvantaras. The word to better define that where all things originate and dissolve is without a doubt the Sanskrit word prabhavapaya. So, let this word be understood as a place or plane where all things originate and dissolve. Nevertheless, it is necessary to emphasize the transcendental idea that Prabhavapaya is neither the mother of the world, nor the womb of the cosmos, nor the material cause of our planet Earth. We, the Gnostics, found the root of the cosmos exclusively in Parabrahman and Mula Prakriti, the eternal Father-Mother, the divine androgyne. I cannot ever forget those moments of pleroma, those blessed moments in which the Father-Mothers taught unto their children the laws of nature. I remember that they were instructing them with delectable songs in the language of the light. Therefore, it is unquestionable that the existing malleable essence in itself, the homogeneous basis of the universe, must be searched for within Parabrahman and Mula Prakriti, the one, that which is under two aspects. While delving in this abstract subject matter that is very difficult for many to comprehend, I remember that during the profound night of Pralaya, the Father-Mothers or divine androgynes did not easily forget the universe that existed. Therefore, when this remembrance is projected in the abstract absolute space, within that which has no name, these forms paradises of inconceivable bliss. It is indubitable that if we would pick a marvelous flower from any of those Edens of the Absolute, and if afterwards we would bring it to the cosmos, it would instantaneously cease having any type of existence. Chapter 32. Mutants. Ever since Louis Pauwels and Jacques Bergier didactically and scientifically spoke of the mutants, it is obvious to comprehend that a true ideological thoughtfulness was produced in the intellectual world. It is unquestionable that this theme about mutants is something unusual, unexpected. Therefore, it is urgent to elucidate, to clarify, to illuminate in a meticulous way this intriguing subject matter. Hence, delving within this vitally important subject matter, we can clearly discover two types of mutations. We will give the classification of favorable mutations to the first type. We will give the classification of unfavorable mutations to the second type. Mutation is removal, change, alteration, variation. The foundation, base, support, and groundwork of the mutant is sex. Louis Pauwels and Jacques Bergier believe that cases of authentic mutants are shown in prodigious children. Dr. J. Ford Thompson, after having examined 5,000 children in England, found among them a bursting fury of intelligence. Among the last 90 children of 7 and 9 years of age who were examined by this psychiatrist, 26 had an intellectual quotient of 140, which is equivalent or close to genius. Dr. Thompson stated that strontium-90, a radioactive product which penetrates into the body, may be the cause of it. This product did not exist before the first atomic explosion. The two North American sages C. Brooke and Robert K. Ennards wrote in their distinguished book entitled The Nature of Living Things that they believe they can demonstrate the following. Presently, the assemblage of genes is suffering a perturbation. As a result of this, and also because of the effect of still mysterious influences, a new race of human beings endowed with superior intellectual powers is arising. This is a very daring thesis that must be accepted with a certain prudence. It is clear by all means that the inheritance atom has been localized within the chromosomes. It is entirely evident that the biological inheritance can be radically transformed in order to originate the mutant. It is unquestionable that in the will for sexual transmutation and the Sahaja Methuna, such as we taught in Chapter 26 of this 1969 to 1970 Christmas message, a frightful sacrifice and an authentic psychological rebellion, or better if we say, a declared insurrection against our biological inheritance exists. The mutant is the obvious and manifested outcome of this very special type of psychosexual rebellion. We, the Gnostics, need to profoundly study the cardinal and definitive laws for the scientific mutation. Any legitimate mutant of a favorable type is the specific outcome of distinct crystallizations of the sexual hydrogen Si12. It is unquestionable that the cited hydrogen represents the final outcome from the transformation of the food within the marvelous laboratory of our human organism. It is obvious that this is the primordial matter with which sex works. This is the prime substance of the great work, a substance which the sexual center fabricates very wisely. It is certain that the ens seminis and its peculiar hydrogen Si12 is seed and fruit at the same time. To transmute this portentous hydrogen, in order to give to it an intelligent crystallization on a second superior octave, actually signifies to create a new life within the existing organism, to give an evident form to the astral body or sidereal body of the alchemists and Kabbalists. The Master Ji stated, "You must understand that the astral body is born from the same material, from the same substance, from the same matter, where the physical body is born. The only thing which is different is the procedure. The whole physical body, all of its cells, as a way of saying, remain impregnated by the emanations of the matter, which is Si12. Therefore, when these have been saturated enough, then the matter Si12 starts to crystallize." Then the cited master added, "The crystallization of this matter constitutes the formation of the astral body. The transition of the matter Si12 into a condition of emanations and into the gradual saturation of the whole organism with these emanations is what in alchemy is called transmutation or transformation." The Master Ji continues, stating, "Precisely, this transformation of the physical body into the astral body is what in alchemy is called the transformation of the gross metals into fine metals, in other words, the acquisition of gold from ordinary metals. The scientific clue for sexual transmutation is in the Sahaja Methuna taught in chapter 26 of this book. The homunculi mistakenly called human being is not born with an astral body. It is obvious that this precious vehicle is not an indispensable implement for existing in this physical world, since the human organism possesses a vital base which allows it to live. The astral body is a luxury that very few people give to themselves. An intellectual animal without such a sidereal vehicle can produce the impression of being very intelligent and even spiritual. Therefore, it is easy that in this way he can cheat himself and cheat others. Nevertheless, there is something that the Master Ji forgot. I am emphatically referring to the demon Apopi from the Egyptian mysteries. This demon in itself is the body of desires. It is obvious that the pseudo-esotericist and pseudo-occultist clairvoyants confuse such a demon with the precious astral body. The horrible demon Apopi, base of all passional bestiality, is found in intimate relation with the grand sympathetic nervous system. Let us delve a little more within this very important theme. Let us delve into profundity, into the mind. Allow me the freedom to disagree with the famous Dr. J. Ford Thompson. Frankly, I do not believe that those famous prodigious children, discovered by the cited psychiatrist, could be mutants. Let us remember that the ego is memory and that it returns into new human wombs. It is unquestionable that after each death, the ego reincorporates again. There is a vulgar statement that says, "It is not because the devil is a devil that the devil knows too much, but because he is very old." In this day and age, in life, the egos are very old. They have returned into this world too many times. They have abundantly repeated what they know, what they learned. Therefore, the outcome of this repetition is the so-called prodigious children who are people who know their job marvelously. That is all. The miserable homunculi falsely called human being still does not possess the authentic solar mind. He only has an intellectual, bestial understanding. The rational animal, even when he might be a prodigious child, is not a mutant. To conceive that a mutant can exist with a lunar, animal, bestial type of mind is the breaking point of absurdity. This is only possible in the mutants who are qualified as unfavorable. Unfortunately, the great clairvoyants from the reactionary pseudo-esotericism and pseudo-occultism are also mistaken. Lamentably, they confuse the demon high horror of Osiris with the legitimate mental solar vehicle. It is unquestionable that the cited intellectual demon is the lunar, animal mental body which presently is occupying the human organism, the place which the authentic Christ mind from the favorable mutation should occupy. The intellectual animal is not born with the solar type of mental body. He must build it if what he wants is to convert himself into a favorable mutant. It is obvious that the alchemist, by means of the Sahaja Methuna, can and must transmute the sexual hydrogen Si12 by passing it into a third musical octave. The outcome of such a procedure is the crystallization of that cited element into the splendid and amazing form of a supersensible mental solar vehicle. This is the Christ mind of the Gnostic Arhat, an extraordinary outcome of sexual mutation. This specific type of mind differs very much from the animal intellect, as water differs from oil. Another very discussable theme, which is in no way irrelevant in this chapter, is the causal body or body of conscious will. It is clear, obvious, and manifested that the clairvoyants from some pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist systems also become lamentably mistaken about this body. This is due to the fact that they confuse the essence with the causal body. The essence in itself is just a fraction of the human soul that is incarnated within ourselves. This essence is bottled up within the ego. It is engulfed within the lunar bodies. It is unquestionable that the homunculi mistakenly called human being is submitted to the law of recurrence. He is not capable of originating anything new. He is a victim of circumstances. Each time that the ego returns into this valley of samsara, it repeats exactly all of the acts of its previous lives, sometimes in elevated spirals, sometimes in lower spirals. In this day and age, within the cheap pseudo-occultism, much is spoken about the law of epigenesis, the capacity for originating new circumstances. It is obvious that only the authentic human beings, with conscious will, can modify their destiny and originate a new order of things. The intellectual animal has not built the body of conscious will, the causal vehicle. The wretched, rational homunculi is always a victim of the eternal laws of return and recurrence. The place within ourselves that should be occupied by the causal body is unfortunately occupied by the demon net of the Egyptian mysteries. It is obvious that such a demon is the living personification of evil will. We need to create the causal body if what we sincerely want is to incarnate the being. Only the being is capable of doing. Only he can modify the circumstances and exercise with mastery the law of epigenesis. Whosoever truly wants to build the causal body must transmute the sexual hydrogen Si12 and pass it, by means of the Sahaja Methuna, into a fourth musical octave in order to crystallize it in the excellent form of the vehicle of the conscious will. The authentic mutant possesses as a fact and by his own right the four bodies, physical, astral, mental, and causal. The vital condition for the second birth is to possess the four bodies of alchemy. Whosoever incarnates his being reaches the second birth and becomes a twice-born. He becomes a legitimate mutant. Therefore, it is unquestionable that the type of favorable mutant is the outcome of the positive crystallizations of the sexual hydrogen Si12. Nevertheless, we must not forget that unfavorable mutants also exist. They are negative crystallizations of the sexual hydrogen Si12. I want to emphatically refer to the practitioners of Black Tantra, to those alchemists who spill the cup of Hermes, to those who ejaculate the ens seminis during the Methuna. Those alchemists develop the abominable Kundabuffer organ and fortify the three traitors of Hiram Abiff and the demons of Seth within themselves. These three traitors, Judas, Pilate, and Caiaphas, are the same three demons of the Egyptian mysteries cited in this chapter: the demon of desire, the demon of the mind, and the demon of evil will. The unfavorable mutant is found between the dilemma of disintegrating his false crystallization or entering within the submerged devolution, within the circle of the terrible necessity. The unfavorable mutant cannot incarnate his being within himself. He is, as a fact, a cosmic failure. Indeed, the unfavorable mutant is a perverse homunculus, but never a true human being. It is obvious that in order to become an authentic human being, one is required to have previously built the solar bodies and to have incarnated the being. Therefore, a human being, the legitimate mutant, the true adept, is as different from the intellectual animal as the day is to night. Radioactivity can originate the modification of the genes of certain individuals, but can never create a favorable or unfavorable mutant. The protein of the gene, slightly affected, will stop producing, as Lewis Powell states, certain acids which are the cause of anguish. Then, we would see the appearance of cynical and perverse people, who are not afraid of anything, who enjoy killing. However, these are not mutants, as some authors suppose. The supposition of Powell's seems ludicrous to me, that the effects of radioactivity respond to a will directed towards the heights. It does not appear correct to me the concept that the genetic mutation produced by the atomic radioactivity of this day and age signifies a spiritual elevation for humanity. It is obvious that the intensive radioactivity can alter the order of the genes and originate defective embryology. However, such monstrous specimens are not mutants. We do not deny that mutation, change, and variation in a monstrous embryology exists. Nevertheless, the authentic mutant we are studying in this chapter is radically different. The idea that a mutant is born only because of the fact of the fundamental alteration of the gene's protein seems absurd to me. This idea of the mutant is fascinating, astonishing, and formidable. On the side of the Luciferians comes Hitler, shouting, "I am going to reveal the secret to you. The mutation of the human race has already begun. Superhuman beings exist." On the side of renovated Hinduism, Powell stated, "The master of the ashram from Pondicherry, one of the greatest thinkers of New India, Sir Aurobindo Ghose, founded his philosophy and his sacred texts commentaries upon the certainty of an ascending evolution of humanity performed by mutations. We, the Gnostics, emphasize the idea that the birth of the mutant by means of atomic explosions and radioactivity cannot be possible. We do not take this Holy Communion's parchment host. No one can cheat us. We can never accept the dogma of evolution. The mutant is the outcome of a revolution of the consciousness. It is the living product of a psychological rebellion. It seems utopian to me, the extravagant concept from Dr. Lewis Wolfe, English specialist in infantile sicknesses from London, when he affirms that in such a country 30,000 phenylketonic mutants are born every year. Powell states that these mutants possess genes that he says do not produce in their blood determined ferments which act in normal blood. The cited author continues stating to us that a phenylketonic mutant is incapable of disassociating the phenylalanine. Powell continues explaining that this incapacity makes the child vulnerable to epilepsy and to eczema. This provokes, accordingly to this cited author, a gray-ashy coloration of the hair and makes the adult person inclined towards mental sicknesses. The mentioned author believes that this phenylketonic race, separated from normal humanity, is the outcome of unfavorable mutations produced by radioactivity. Powell does not want to comprehend that these sick human specimens are certainly the outcome of the atomic explosions. It is lamentable that they make a mysticism from scientific madness, namely, from atomic experiments, H-bombs, etc. Powell believes in the possibility of favorable mutations by means of radioactivity from this fatal epoch in which we live. He supposes that this type of positive mutants could, he says, have in their blood susceptible products in order to improve their physical equilibrium and to increase their quotient of intelligence very much above our own. Powell thinks that mutants like this could carry in their veins natural sedatives that shelter them from the psychic shocks of life and from the complexes of anguish, etc., etc., etc. It is pitiful that this otherwise intelligent author has made a religion from atomic explosions and their radiations. Chapter 33. The Demon High. A long time ago, within an old palace, I found a dungeon. A venerable elder was inside of it. His aureole beard had 13 clusters of hair, his white head had 31 long curls of hair. He was the Ancient of Days, goodness of the goodness, concealed of the concealed, mercy of mercies. His neck was like a tower of ivory, his eyes like the fish pools in Heshbon by the gate of Bath-rabbim, his nose was as the tower of Lebanon which looks towards Damascus. Then I fell on my knees biting the dust of the earth. And while holding a dagger in my hand, I shouted with anguish. I exclaimed with all the strength of my soul, I killed him. I killed him. Strange vision. The years passed by, the days of my wild youth were gone. Then, finally, I understood. It is written with fiery letters within the book of the law that the fallen bodhisattva was enter into the cycle of the terrible necessity accused of 3 crimes. First, to have assassinated their Buddha. Second, to have dishonored the gods. Third, many other different, common and current crimes. I was a fallen bodhisattva. Yes. 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 It is unquestionable that if I had not repented, I would have entered into the submerged devolution of the mineral kingdom. Have you ever heard of the Count Zenoni? Like him, I also had an immortal, physical body. In the ancient continent Mu, after the departure from Eden, I, with my heart contrite, re-entered into the mysteries. I swallowed soil. Yes. 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 My body was entombed, the gods know this. The initiatic resurrection came after 3 days. I utilized the fourth dimension in order to escape from the sepulchre. The holy women treated my Lemurian body with many medicines and aromatic ointments. During the course of more than 10,000 years of incessant earthquakes and erupting volcanoes, that ancient continent Mu was submerging itself within the boisterous waters of the Pacific Ocean. Nevertheless, I continued to exist with my immortal body on the Atlantean continent. I led many mystical peregrinations that went sometimes towards Yucatan or to Teotihuacan. To achieve the immortality of the human organism would seem more than impossible for the people who are not versed in revolutionary Gnosticism. Present sages particularly want to achieve this, but it is obvious that they do not know our formulae. I confess that in that epoch, I especially liked very much to abide in a precious valley now covered by the stormy waters of the Gulf of Mexico. The fourth root race or Atlantean race notably evolved until reaching its objective. Then subsequently, it precipitated itself through the devolving, descending path. It is obvious that a descent always occurs after every ascent, and ascension is always followed by a descent. When the continent that was known with the name of Atlantis was submerged within the Atlantic Ocean, some survivors continued to exist in present lands, as the studies of paleontology have already started to suspect. I want to emphatically refer to 2 types of people. The first ones were the famous troglodytes, who were Atlanteans in a decisively devolving state. Obviously, they were submerged within the most frightful barbarian state, such as the Occidental science has discovered when finding their unmistakable remains within the profound caverns of the Earth. The second ones were Atlanteans in an evolving state. These historic Pelasgians were very educated people who, from the first igneous manifestations of the second Transapalnean catastrophe, initiated their return towards the oriental regions that were their place of origin. This is the origin of the universal tradition of the exodus of Io from the Garden of Hesperides, Poseidon, throughout all meridional Europe and through Bosphorus, towards Colchis and Armenia where, in accordance with tradition, the Ark of Noah was docked, or where the holy initiatic cult of Ararat or cult of the Aryan Mountains where the Tigris and Euphrates and other rivers are born, was established. A wise esotericist author stated, "These Pelasgians or Occidental Aryo-Atlanteans received a different name in each one of the regions of the world where they were spread out. They were called Cyclops because they had the eye of intuition still opened, since they were more or less depositaries of the initiatic truths. The gigantic constructions that they built were labeled Cyclopean constructions. It is clear that from the North American Pennsylvania until the Oxus and the Aral throughout Europe and Africa, still such astonishing constructions in ruin are shown. They were called Tyrians and Titans because of the god It or Hercules who was commanding them. Regarding Hercules, there exists a more abundant amount of data than what is believed to exist. They were called Chalcas or Chaldeans or Chalcidians because of their anti-Atlantean origin from the Chalcas country, which they used to return to, also because of knowing the copper, Chalcas, and because of developing themselves in an age of frank decadency. They were called Akkadians because of their navigating knowledge and because of having passed through the sea with their redeemers, their leaders. They were called Arcadians, which was a deviation from Akkadians, or it was a reference to the ark or symbolic boat that recalled them. They were called Chalchidians or Colchians as a deviation of the word Chalcus, knowledge of numeration, or the hieratratic hieroglyphic and symbolic writing, Kabbalah, etc. They were called Arameans or Aryan men, Druids, because of their initiated priests and because of their fire cult, that is to say, their cult to the sun, to purity, to the truth buried in the catastrophe. They were called Llanos because of their Inca conductor or king priest, Iha, O, Tau, Llanes, etc. They were called Bretons or Britannis from Brig, bright, the Aryan radical sign from that which shines, which glows. In other words, always and forever the sun. They were called men-fires or menhirs because they were Occidental people, or more commonly because of their fire cult. Thus, they named themselves and even the stones of their sepulchres menhirs. They were called Nahuas, Nahualis in Mexico and in certain parts of Arabia, Syria, etc., and Nebo, the initiatic wisdom. They were called Tuathas of Danann, for the same or similar reasons, already explained in another part. They were called Sumerians, from Surya the sun, in Babylon and Nineveh, and Tihuanascos or Tihuanacos in Peru. They were called Thessalian primitives, maybe because of the expressed retrocession of their peregrinations. They were called Myneans, because of their Coloradonization in the island of Crete, and Mycenaeans because of other islands similar in Asia Minor and Greece. They were called Germanos because of the god Hermes, Thoth, or Odin, Ursinians from Erda the Mother Earth. They were called Sabaeans because of their wisdom in heavenly and terrestrial things. They were called Hemierites or Homerites because of their double Aryan and Atlantean character, origin, from their epoch and country of colonization. They were called Kamites because of their instructor Cam, Jan, or Janos, Hyperboreans because of the regions where the Greeks knew them and because of the White Island beyond the Boreas and because of their most excellent initiatic traditions from the first root race. They were called Axinos or inaccessible ones in the Jinn concept, Phrygians from the Scandinavian goddess Phrygia, Juno, or Diana Lunis. They were called Mishos or envoys in order to save the troglodyte humanity from its definitive physical and moral ruin. They were called Taurians because of their Mithraic cult, which gave the name unto the celebrated Armenian mountain range. They were called Phlegians as eternal, peregrines or errant human comets, Curets and Quirites because of their Quiritarian, Kyries, Lance, Sunbeam, acts and because of their Corias or Curias. Aeneans or Ionians because of their Aeneas, Enos, Enoch, Janos, or Noah. It was precisely in the Oriental world, during that brilliant Aryo-Atlantean epoch, when I committed an error similar to that one committed by the Count Zanoni. He fell in love with a beautiful artist from Naples. Thus, the outcome was frightful because he died under the guillotine during the French Revolution. Count Zanoni was an immortal Chaldean. He received the elixir of long life in ancient times, and it is clear to comprehend that sex was forbidden to him. My case was similar. I was an ancient Lemurian with an immortal body. I also fell in the arms of Kundry, that Eve from Hebraic mythology, the woman of antonomasia. Hence, the outcome was the fatal loss of my precious Lemurian vehicle. It is written with characters of fire in the book of life that any resurrected master must not return to sex. This is known by the divine and humans. The violation of this great law signifies death. It is evident that my capital error was that I accepted the gift of Cupid at the height of my youth. Therefore, I tell human beings and gods that they should always avoid immortalizing a young physical body. When the civilization of the first Aryan subrace flourished in the central plateau of Asia, I intended to re-emerge. Then, I entered with much humbleness into the sacred order of Tibet. This is how I became an authentic Lama. I had to build the solar bodies again by means of the Sahaja Maithuna. It is written in the Akashic records of nature that I then reconquered the second birth. Unfortunately, I committed certain extremely grave mistakes. When I wanted to help the queen of my country with the sacred IT clue, I was expelled from this venerated order due to this mistake. I then continued in samsara. I returned into Egypt during the dynasty of the pharaoh Khephren. I achieved a lot then, but not everything. Presently, after having suffered a lot, I have returned onto the straight path. Now, I am standing on my feet anew. I know in depth the path of the revolution of the consciousness. Therefore, this is why I am the avatar of the new Aquarian age. All the intellectual homunculi, mistakenly called human beings, solely wish to liberate themselves from death. However, they do not know how to liberate themselves from life. Blessed be the ones who are dignified by the glacial beauty of the blessed goddess Mother Death. Blessed be the ones who destroyed the illusory wall of their vain existence, those who dissolved the I, and who were within all of the abysses. Death. That which was our whole yesterday, today is just our nothingness. Eternity. Sepulchral beauty. I wept a lot, I descended into the forge of the Cyclops, I shouted with the whole strength of my soul, hear my imploring voice, O Isis. Tear thy cowl, and thy unknowable star. Have pity on me, make me a sign of light. Eternity, return to me what thou tookest from me, my purple tunic, my wedding garments. Abyss from a profound mystery, reimburse me that which thy deepness absorbed. Sphinx from the desert of Egypt, open thine ear. Have pity now, O obscure night. What seas without shores, what an infinite night, what profound wells, what Stygian beasts I found within the interior of myself. Thus, I returned to the second birth dressed with the wedding garment of the soul. Thus, I learned how to die within myself. Now, I am a defunct one who can tranquilly study the book of the dead. I am alive, nonetheless, I am dead. Ah! If people could understand all of this. Hence, that night on which I returned into the sacred order of Tibet. I was happy. I left the cadaver of the terrible demon Apopi within the deepest abysses. Lord! Lord! How much I suffer when I see these mistaken, wretched people. They think that they already possess the astral body. However, they truly only possess the body of desires, the abominable demon Apopi. Beautiful work from my mother Kundalini. She reduced the frightful demon of desire into dust. But what about the mind? Woe! 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 Alas! How terribly proud I was with my mental demon, with the frightful devil high. I also believed that this was the authentic intellectual vehicle. Oh, God of mine! The Kausakazaram of my lunar mental vehicle was lust. This is how I comprehended it. If I would have known it before. Yes. 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 I knew it, but I forgot. I opened the Egyptian book of the occult abode and I studied chapter 40. Which literally states, get thee hence, O demon high. Demon of the mind, horror of Osiris. Thine head, the mental lunar vehicle, has been cut by Thoth, Buddha, the innermost. The cruelties, the work on mental disintegration, that I have exercised on myself, has been commanded unto me by the hierarchies of heaven. Get thee hence, then, O demon high, thou unto whom Osiris feels horror. Get away from my boat, my life's own ship, blown by propitious winds. Gods from heaven who have demolished the enemies of Osiris, those entities or devil egos that constitute the ego, watch. The gods from the vast land are subjugated. Away from me, demon Ahmatahu, high, the god, lord of the region of the dead, initiates, detest thee. I know thee. I know thee. I know thee. Away from me, demon of the animal mind, do not attack me, since I am pure and I accommodate myself unto the cosmic rhythms. Do not approach me, do not tempt me, thou who comest without being invited. Thou dost not know me, demon, who thinks that he knows everything, who ignores that I conserve the dominion over the enchantments of thy mouth, which speaks grandeur, but does not know anything. Therefore, know this. Although, it seems that I am at the shelter of thy claws. In regard to thee, O demon Ahsahs. The same demon of the mind, behold Horus, the divine spirit of each person, who cuts thy claw, the time. Verily he has been destroyed in Pe and in Dep, the worlds of desire and of the mind, with his legions of demons, devil egos, in the battlefield array. It has been the eye of Horus's clairvoyance, who by studying thee and seeing thee has defeated thee, but with the help of Isis. I reject thee, demon, in accordance with thy advances. I have defeated thee by means of the breath of my mouth, the word. I have defeated thee who tortures the sinners and who devours them, perverse mind. Therefore, give back unto me my writing tablet with all of the accusations which it contains, blasphemous and accusing mind. I have not committed sins against the gods, therefore do not attack me. Take just what I, myself grant thee, the death which thou deserves, the abyss. Do not take me with thee. Do not devour me. Since I am the Lord of life, sovereign of the horizon, an already Christified being. So, this is how, by intensely working and by supplicating Isis, my divine mother Kundalini, I finally achieved the disintegration, the reduction of the terrible demon High of the Egyptian mysteries into cosmic dust. Such a perverse demon is the very same mental body that many authors wrote about, namely, Leadbeater, Annie Besant, Max Heindel, Arthur Power, etc. Frankly, I do not blame those authors, since they did what they could. Wretched ones. They suffered a lot. Nevertheless, we, the brethren of the Gnostic movement, have to delve into the root of all these things, and this is not a crime. Jesus the great Kabir stated, "Suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." Matthew 19 verse 14. It is urgent to reconquer the infancy in the mind, in the heart, and in the sex. To intend such a reconquest without previously eliminating the lunar mental body, demon high, would be an absurdity. Such an intellectual, animal vehicle is a granulated Luciferian fire. It is obvious that the origin of the animal mind was lust. The most tremendous ordeal was also the decisive one. One given night, my own innermost God, by placing a crucible filled with liquid mercury on the floor, intended to verify an alchemical transmutation, but because there was no fire under the crucible, it is obvious that he failed in his intent. Then, he made me to understand that he needed to perform such an alchemical operation with the purpose of crystallizing a new, extremely subtle organism. I believed that maybe it was related with the creation of the famous Sambhogakaya, that in accordance with some high initiates, it is stated that it has 3 more perfections than the ineffable vehicle of the Nirmanakas. Well, I am a Nirmanakya, and it is clear that by having the possibility of possessing the precious vehicle of the Sambhogakayas was something extremely tempting for me. I have failed in this operation because of the lack of fire, said my real being unto me. Then, he added, give me a match, spark, ember, or flame. I understood that I should perform a work of sexual magic. This left me perplexed, confused, astonished. Yes. But, is it perhaps licit for a twice-born one to return into the flaming forge of Vulcan? What is this? What? It is clear that I did not fail in this ordeal. That night other adepts were submitted to the same ordeal. Some of them failed, others did not fail. The fact that the very innermost God submits oneself to ordeals is certainly rare and astonishing. By all means it stands out that the beloved one wants to be sure of that which he possesses. He needs a diamond soul, Vajrasattva. The reception in the temple was formidable. The venerable Ancient of Days, my monad, and I, wretched suffering soul, grasped with our right hands, he the scepter and I the cross. Both of us entered into the sanctuary revested with our sacred vestures. I knew that I had assassinated this elder, but he had resuscitated within me. The king is dead, long live the king. Nevertheless, I was not the one, wretched soul in pain, who had assassinated the Ancient of Days. The 3 traitors, Judas, Pilate, and Caiaphas, killed him. Yes. However, it is obvious that Pilate always washes his hands. How horrible is High, the demon of the mind. Thus, inside the temple and in front of the altar, the elder of all ages and I were praying. The elder placed very close a Buddhic bowl filled with coins. These coins in themselves are capital of good deeds. It is clear that my good deeds were enough in order to pay the old and to acquire forgiveness. The final festivity was marvelous, portentous. This was performed in a splendid hall. The host was a glorious master of the White Brotherhood. Some trees within that precious hall were crowned with laurels. Those small bushes were looking very beautiful in their pots. They were standing out within that hall. All the guests arrived with funeral attire and with very much respect, since they had to celebrate the defunct's festivity. The horrible demon Hai had died. Therefore, this deserved a festivity. Soon that hall was filled with people. I greeted many guests. The hostmaster welcomed many others. The delightful music and the tables filled with people gave to the place a very special note of cosmic happiness. I felt joyful when conversing with the great Hierophant. Now, I do not have lunar mind. Nevertheless, I can think. I use my solar mind, the one that I built in the forge of the Cyclops,